watching and sees the recording of this later on. So we will now move to our final speaker, who is Sam McGill from the Revolutionary Communist Group. So over to you, Sam.
Thank you so much, and thank you to everybody who's participated tonight. Really useful, insightful contributions. So we need to be crystal clear where we stand on Venezuela. The meeting tonight has been organised by us in Britain, and the British government has said that it's got serious concerns about the elections, stating there were irregularities and a lack of transparency. Well, firstly, we are in Britain, the belly of the beast, the oldest imperialist nation in the world, the same imperialist Britain that attacked Venezuela's borders in 1840, commissioning the infamous Schomburg Line to claim the Orinoco River mouth for the British Empire. This is the same imperialist Britain that's home to the aristocratic Vesti family, which grew rich acquiring cattle ranches in Venezuela, driving land clearances and ethnic cleansing. This is the same imperialist Britain whose Foreign Office just recently operated a secretive reconstruction unit for Venezuela to plan for bagging contracts for British companies should there be a successful coup. And the same imperialist Britain that today hoards £1.4 billion of stolen Venezuelan gold in the coffers of the Bank of England. This rotten, racist, imperialist state has nothing but contempt and condemnation for the popular will and well-being of the Venezuelan people. They have no right to declare anything in relation to Venezuela's democracy. It's therefore our duty as anti-imperialists to oppose any interference in Venezuela's sovereign affairs. Election results are determined not in Miami, not in London, not in Madrid, not on the keyboard of Elon Musk, but in Caracas, through the institutions set out by the Venezuelan constitution. Secondly, we are socialists. Venezuela is playing a leading role in the struggle for socialism and against imperialism worldwide. For 25 years, the Chavista movement has fought to take control over Venezuela's oil resources and plough this wealth into social programs, healthcare, housing, education, regional projects. The Bolivarian Revolution has declared its determination to build socialism. And this struggle has been driven forward by an explosion of popular participatory democracy through the communal movement. On the international stage, Venezuela has joined Cuba, Bolivia, Nicaragua, and others to forge regional alternatives to neoliberalism, like ALBA, the Bolivarian Alliance for the Americas, a trade bloc based on mutual development and exchange, PetroCaribe, a program launched to provide subsidized oil, and CELAC, the Community of Latin American and Caribbean States, providing an alternative to the US-dominated Organization of American States. Venezuela has repeatedly denounced US and EU imperialism for their warmongering in Iraq, Afghanistan, Syria, and Libya. And Venezuela stands steadfast in its support for the Palestinian people and cut off diplomatic ties with Israel back in 2009. For these crimes, the Venezuelan people have faced down coups, mercenary attacks, and a blockade which UN special rapporteurs have likened to a medieval siege. Ever since Obama designated Venezuela as an extraordinary threat to the US national security, sanctions have tightened like a noose around the necks of the Venezuelan population, designed to make the economy scream and foment popular discontent, just as they did in Chile in 1973. The threat that Venezuela poses, not just to US imperialism, but to the whole global system of imperialist exploitation, is indeed extraordinary. As Southcom Commander Laura Richardson remarked, Latin America is off the charts rich. 60% of the world's lithium is in the region, heavy crude, light sweet crude, rare earth elements, the Amazon. You can almost see the dollar signs in her eyes. Venezuela represents an obstacle to unrestrained US plunder of these resources. But it's more than just economics. The threat is political. The threat of a good example, the idea that nations held down under centuries of colonialism, then neo-colonialism, can chart their own independent path, that they can use their natural resources for their own development instead of nourishing the prosperity of empires. That such nations can dream of an alternative society, one that puts people before profit, and fight to make that dream a reality. The struggle in Venezuela embodies this possibility. So when we expose the fault lines at stake, we can see there is no third way. Either you take the side of the struggle for socialism, the struggle against imperialism, or you are siding with US imperialism and its lackeys in Britain and the European Union. We take the side of the Bolivarian Revolution. So it's absolutely shameful that in Britain and Europe, in the ranks of the left, there are self-professed socialist and communist organizations who are today taking the side of imperialism. These groups are hiding behind a split within the Venezuelan movement to justify their position. A faction of the Venezuelan Communist Party backed a right-wing opposition deputy called Enrique Marquez as their presidential candidate. He received 0.4% of the vote. His support base is insignificant. Nevertheless, Marquez bolstered Machado and Gonzalez in their far-right coup plot by refusing to cooperate with the Supreme Court investigation of the elections. Whatever disagreements and critiques this faction of the Communist Party of Venezuela have about Maduro's economic policies, endorsing Marquez and parroting the lines of the far right has only facilitated imperialist interference. Affiliated to this faction are a raft of Marxist-Leninist so-called communist parties and organizations, most of them in Europe, and they are now siding with the far right. They have joined the chorus crying fraud and painting orchestrated opposition violence as popular mobilizations that should be defended. Let's remember this opposition violence killed 25 people in Venezuela at the end of July. And we've heard from Jorge about the results of that fascist violence on the street. Yet the international Marxist tendencies, Jorge Martin, declares that the working class will lose if Maduro's boss's government remains in power. This is disgraceful. The international Marxist tendency, through its British-based organisation Socialist Appeal, which recently changed its name to the Revolutionary Communist Party. We're the Revolutionary Communist Group. They've recently changed their names. Please don't get us confused. They used to run a campaign called Hands Off Venezuela. And actually, they took principled action alongside ourselves to defend Venezuela against previous coup attempts. We worked together on various protests and events. Now, the campaign has been inactive since January 2023, and as Venezuela is again in the grips of imperialist intervention and destabilization, it remains silent, and its parent organizations are attacking the Venezuelan Bolivarian Revolution. Now, I'm talking about this because I think it's important for us to understand what we're up against here in Britain in terms of what we need to do to fight to build solidarity with Venezuela. Secondly, there's another trend within Britain, a Trotskyist political trend led by the Socialist Workers Party, which has never lifted a finger to defend Venezuela, whether in 2002 against the 48-hour failed coup against Hugo Chavez, or in 2019 against the ridiculous imposition of Juan Guaido as the unelected interim president of Venezuela and the subsequent non-recognition of the Venezuelan government. They refused to join our protests at the Bank of England demanding the return of Venezuela's gold, and they claim that Maduro and the PSUV don't offer a way forward. And you never hear such critics mention the role of the communes and the communal councils, who continue to forge their alternative system of participatory democracy and economic production and distribution via self-managed projects in the hearts of their communities. And of course, social democrats and liberals in Britain get their narratives from the supposedly left-leaning Guardian newspaper, which has consistently attacked Venezuela's Bolivarian Revolution since its early days. So one quote from Tom Phillips, the Guardian hack in Caracas at the moment, he reported on the 3rd of August that Maduro has lost the streets. This was the same day that huge Chavista protests flooded Caracas, Barquisimeto, Orinoco City, Cumana, Cojedes, and other cities. The Guardian provides constant sound bites for the opposition and spins the myth that Gonzalez and Machado have mass support of a population repressed by a deeply unpopular dictator, Maduro. But the reality is plain to see, as Jorge's shown us in the photos. Popular support for the Bolivarian Revolution is on the streets. It runs deeper than the ballot box. Hundreds of thousands of Venezuelan revolutionaries have turned out repeatedly before and after the election, regularly filling whole avenues. This is conveniently censored from the left and other liberal media alike. Meanwhile, the myth of mass support for the opposition is exposed by their dwindling protests, just like Carolina mentioned. In fact, apparently last weekend, their protest was bigger in Miami than it was in Caracas, and this illustrates where their real support base lies. So in closing, we need to understand that this issue goes beyond Venezuela. It is a question about the right to resistance, whether in Palestine, Cuba, Venezuela, Niger. Do you support the right of people to resist imperialism, the right of nations, movements, and peoples who've had the boot of imperialism on their necks for centuries to resist, to struggle, to chart their own path to self-determination by any means they see necessary? If yes, then you must take the side of the Bolivarian Revolution and its chosen presidential candidate, Nicholas Maduro. You must accept that the processing, investigation, and publication of election results are the sovereign right of the Venezuelan constitutional structures. And yes, of course, the Bolivarian Revolution faces challenges, contradictions, and problems. Of course it does. It's not a utopia. It is a nation fighting to construct socialism against the deeply entrenched superstructure of an oil rentier capitalist state, a few hundred miles from the biggest imperialist superpower in history. Anyone who believes a country facing sanctions and sustained imperialist intervention can move along a linear path towards a perfect socialist utopia is living in cloud cuckoo land. So yes, we need to fight the media war and protest the BBC and Guardian for their shameful manipulative coverage. We need to take to the streets and demand the Bank of England give back the gold. We need to work within all the movements we're connected to on Palestine, against racism, against austerity, for the environment, to fight the lies and distortions about Venezuela. Let's be clear, to stand in solidarity with Venezuela is to stand in solidarity with Palestine, is to stand in solidarity with anti-imperialist struggles around the world. No sanctions, no coups, imperialist hands off Venezuela. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Sam, for your speech. Thank you for your contribution and for highlighting the crimes of imperialist Britain and Venezuela and why we as communists in Britain need to be steadfast in our solidarity with the Venezuelan people and with the Bolivarian Revolution, and also highlighting that that fight is also a fight against opportunism here in Britain as well, which seeks to derail demonstrations of international solidarity, and the need also to support the right for people to resist imperialist violence everywhere. So incredible contribution. Thank you so much.